Now, when I first saw the venue, I thought DWPS and DPS were the same thing. And then someone told me they're actually not, and there's a healthy rivalry going on between the two. Is that true? No, no, because even I don't like DPS. And I'm from DPS. Just kidding. Both schools are great. Like many others, this is my first TED talk or any kind of public speaking for that matter. So naturally, I was nervous, and the first thought that came into my mind when they told me you could book tickets for this event is to have a bunch of my friends book so they can, come and sit in the audience and cheer and clap for me for no reason. But obviously, I live in Hyderabad, so I couldn't do that. But I have a good feeling that we'll get along and we'll be good friends by the end of this speech. Right? So, again, I don't want to give you an emotional sob story about my life. You know, the kind where I talk about all the pain, the struggles, and the sleepless nights I've been through to make it. Because honestly, that's not how I experienced it. For me, it was fun, it was exciting, and I genuinely love what I do every day. And that's the picture I want to paint for you guys as well. That your journey doesn't have to be this painful grind. It can be fun and exciting and deeply fulfilling. So don't default into thinking you have to go through a lot of struggle to do something big in life. I want to give you a quick link between what is it that I want to talk about, how it's relevant to me, and why should you even bother listening to me. So my name is Anurag. I run a marketing company called Pixel Penguin Media. I started when I was about 19, 20 years old, when I was still in college. And the first business that I launched was an e-commerce business that we scaled to 8 figures in the very first year. And from here, a lot of e-commerce brands started reaching out to us organically. They wanted to see what it is that we were doing differently. So that's how we got into helping other brands with their marketing. And in 2020, we launched our marketing agency before COVID. And since then, we've worked with nearly 600 brands, including Fortune 500 billion-dollar companies, majorly in the North American market. Our campaigns are currently doing $200 million in annual revenue for our clients. That's roughly 1,800 crores per annum. And we've built a team of 40 that's rapidly growing. And we're on track to do our IPO in the next 2 years. And I honestly think the biggest advantage I've had over my peers, my friends who are just as smart as me and work just as hard as me, is simply the advantage of starting early. And that is what I want to talk about today. Now, I don't have to tell you that some of the most successful people on the planet have started very early in life. So why does starting early matter? I always thought our late teens and early 20s are the defining years of our life. But when I dug deeper, I read there's something called a prefrontal cortex in our brain that's responsible for decision making, long term thinking, planning, etc., that's still developing at this age. So, here, your brain is still like wet cement that's soft enough to take new shape. It's more moldable and adaptable than it'll ever be again. So, what you spend time doing, thinking about, and consuming in this age really ends up shaping the rest of your lives. And I also think you're in this low risk, high reward phase in life at this age. Let me explain. Compare a 20-year-old to a 40-year-old. When you're 20 years old, you don't have a lot to lose. You don't have a lot of responsibilities. You don't have a family that's relying on you. You don't have EMIs. And the world doesn't really expect much from you. So if you fail at 20, people say, oh, he's young, he's just learning. But if you fail at 40, suddenly it becomes, did he quit his job for that? How will he support his family? How will he earn? So the same experiment has a much bigger cost later in life. Now on the flip side, if you do succeed at 20, all of a sudden, you're celebrated like this exceptional prodigy. Not just that, you also created a massive head start financially, professionally, and personally. If you succeed at 40, that's respected and impressive. But the same thing at 20 is inspirational. It's exceptional. So that way, you have this low risk, high reward window in life when you start early. One important thing is not to quit. Because there's no point in starting early or any advantage to starting early if you also quit early. Most people quit because they are failing and they think it's not working out for them. And there's a very important perspective change that is needed here. Throughout schooling, we're conditioned to look at failure as a bad thing, right? When you fail a test, you get bad grades, you're judged. So naturally, as adults, we tend to avoid anything that risks failure. But if you want to do anything big in life, be it business, politics, or anything meaningful, you simply cannot avoid failure. Ask anybody you know who's successful. They'll tell you how many times they failed before things finally worked out. And even after they worked out, even after they found success, they're still failing. Just on a bigger level, and they now know how to deal with it better. The way to look at it is, the more you fail, the faster you fail, the faster you learn, and the closer you get to success. So you need to tell yourself, the more I fail, the closer I get to success. So with that change in perspective to how you look at failure, it's now harder for you to quit because you know every time you fail, you're actually getting closer to success. Now you might say, that sounds good, but I still need to plan and prepare. I can't just get started without experience. And that's where most people get stuck. They keep planning, they keep researching, overthinking. They keep waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect idea, the perfect level of confidence. But the truth is, action teaches you infinitely more than planning ever will. Obviously, there needs to be some planning. You do need a direction before you start moving. But don't mistake spending months or even years perfecting your plan as being productive. Because no matter how much time you spend refining it, the plan always changes once you get started. The ones who win early aren't the ones who planned perfectly. They're the ones who started imperfectly. Now, once you start making some progress through action, you start seeing small wins. You start getting results. This is when you build confidence. I think confidence isn't something you're born with. It doesn't come with age, and I don't think it's a personality trait either. Confidence is something you build. Because every time you take action and you see even a small result, you're proving to yourself you can do it. And that proof stacks up. It becomes a loop. Action creates results. Results create confidence. And that confidence pushes you to take even more action. Right? And then, through all these experiences, over time, the wins, the mistakes, the risks you take start shaping who you are. Psychologists call the age between 18 to 25 emerging adulthood. This is when you figure out your identity, your values, your core beliefs, your worldview. The people you meet, the things you try, the work you do, they all become part of your foundation. So you're not just building a career, you're building yourself. You're creating a version of you that's ambitious, that's confident, that's driven. And that version becomes the biggest advantage for the rest of your life. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this talk, it's this. Don't wait for life to give you a green signal. Start early, start messy, and start now. Thank you.